लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग ऑफलाइन दिखा रहा है ना, ठीक है, लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग ऑफलाइन दिखा रहा है। हाँ हाँ अभी नहीं है। आ गया। हाँ आ गया। एक बार उनको मैम को सेंड करो, मैम को सेंड करो। हाँ चलो हो गया, शेयर कर दिए, हो गया ठीक। एक सेकंड,
हो गया,
एक सेकंड। हाँ हाँ इस पे क्या लिख दें, एक सेकंड, ठीक है, इस पे लिख देते हैं लीगल इम्प्रूवमेंट एंड एसजी, ठीक है। मैम टाइटल में क्या लिख दें?
टाइटल में आप लिखिए लीगल एम्पावरमेंट एंड एसडीजी 16।
नहीं रेड है, रेड।
ये जो
हाँ रेड है यार। ठीक ठीक चल रहा है ना, बस ठीक, बस ठीक। अरे पीछे नहीं, पीछे जब पहले इसको सेटिंग करें, अभी थोड़ी चेंज होगा, अभी शुरू थोड़ी हुआ। हाँ अरे अभी कैमरा लगाएं तब ना। क्या चीज बाद में देखेंगे, पहले जो हो रहा है उसको करने दो। हो गया ना? हाँ ठीक जैसे चल रहा है चलने दो बस, ठीक है। हाँ हाँ एसडीजी सिस्टम। अरे हम देख के लिखते बोले बस, और क्या। ये लो, अरे कुछ नहीं, चुपचाप बैठो बस। कर देंगे भाई, कर देंगे। हो गया ना, हो गया ना, ठीक। टाइमिंग देखना पड़ेगा। हाँ टाइमिंग चल रहा है 4 मिनट। अरे तो उसको म्यूट करेंगे तब ना। अब बताओ, आई बंद हो गई ना। ठीक है, बंद हो गई ना म्यूट। हो गया मैं? अरे म्यूट हो गया यार। हाँ उसको म्यूट कर दिया। माइक चला अभी तो स्टार्ट।
In fact, I had a big fight, a big quarrel with an eminent jurist of Brazil when we introduced the concept of extra-legal. That jurist indicated that we were just confusing everything, that there was no such thing as extra-legal. You were either legal or illegal. Well, I said to him, if you look at the distribution of your population, you will find a few people who are criminals. They are clearly illegal. And a few people, you know, the two edges of the bell curve, a few people who are making their living almost completely within the law. And the bulk of the people are neither criminals nor spending most of the time within all the structures of the law. Who are those people? What do you call them? And that's why we found that word. In any event, at that time in India, 20 million legal cases were pending, and you had about 11 judges to every 1 million people. I would imagine that has changed. I'm not sure, because when I look at the progress towards SDG 16,
in 10 years have passed, so you can have.
well, when we have somebody like Vivek, you know, you have to take the data as correct. In Cairo, back in those days, it took 500 days, 315 laws, and the equivalent of 6 months of wages to register a baker shop. No wonder people stayed where they stayed, right? Who would want to go through that? So that was the problem. What was our answer? We proposed that you had to have people engage in taking greater control over their lives, but using the law. And so we talked about 4 pillars. And these 4 pillars were property rights, business rights, and we introduced the idea of business rights, which is not in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but it's a way of getting people, wean them off sort of usurious microcredit and microfinance, which at least in those days had real exorbitant rates. We talk about labor rights, going beyond the ILO conventions, and we talk about access to justice and the rule of law. But all of that to work with people, forming groups and taking action and working with civil society, and then contestation. So the empowerment process that we were thinking about but did not articulate in the report, but I subsequently articulated that, has 4 simple steps. The first one is people need to form groups, so mobilization, standard thing. Everybody working with civil society knows that. The next thing is to articulate clearly the issues that people want to address. The third one then is the tough one. That's contestation, where you have to contest the existing structures, power structures, to change the law that keeps those people oppressed or in poverty. And the final thing that you have to do, if you win, is then confirmation in law. So those 4 steps, very simply, are mobilization, articulation, contestation, and finally confirmation in law. That, working together with the 4 pillars of property rights, business rights, labor rights, and access to justice and the rule of law, was what we proposed. And that is all described in the book called Legal Rights of the Poor, that I published in 2014, or in the report called Making the Law Work for Everyone. All the details are there. I don't have time to go into those details. I took a look at the global context, so moving forward to today, and see what was going on. So I looked at recent commentaries and public opinions and what was happening at Davos, where I get the impression that the economic elite are finding new ways of justifying what they do best. And you have a few things happening in the world, and SDG 16 will have to be achieved in that context. Populism and its impact is one. Are we heading to a leaderless world? The populism has resulted in the weakening of the President of France, Chancellor of Germany, and in the United States, it ended up electing a non-leader. I couldn't find a better word for the leader, President of the United States. I live in Canada, and I have to be careful. We're neighbors, you know, but that's the best word I could find. Might be worse than that. I'm sure Vivek would have a better word than I can find. But the other thing that's happening, globalization, has been taking place forever. I think that's a sort of a natural process, and I stick my head out there. I'm sure the economists in the room, and I think we have a few around. The problem is not globalization, I think, it's globalism, which is the ideology rather than the process. And that's coupled with populism, is creating a global situation in which we have a triple confidence crisis. We have a problem globally and nationally with democracy, which is sort of receding. Global institutions continue. The three main ones I'm talking about, the World Bank, the IMF, and the WTO, to be non-democratic, as we know. And the third one, of course, the issue of large corporations, which continue to be driven by greed and by tax evasion. So we are in a global world with China's presidency summed up as an unpredictable international scenario and he's calling for vigilance against black swans, with things are going to happen that we could not predict, or what he calls gray rhinos, things which are obvious but ignored. Let me just come quickly to the SDGs and then wrap this up so we can have a conversation. The SDGs are clearly interlinked. So SDG 16 has to be taken in the context of all the other SDGs. When we look at SDG 1 and look at the targets, you will find several targets which are linked to SDG 16. And they are linked to the work I'm talking about, legal empowerment of the poor. A lot of them talk about access to assets through the law. If we look at SDG 16 itself, well, of course, that talks about identity, access to justice and the rule of law, decision making, that's participatory, and so on. When you look at progress under SDG 16, we find that progress is very slow. I'll give you one quick indicator as we go forward. In 2008, when we produced the report, 50% of babies born in sub-Saharan Africa were not registered at birth. The number is still the same. About 46% has dropped 4 over the last 10 years. Are not registered at birth. Now, the global average is a bit better. Many countries have been doing much better. India has done a great job of moving in terms of registration. The Aadhaar program is celebrated in many places. Freedom of information is still a big challenge, although that's been improving somewhat. One of the indicators that we measure SDG 16 against is rates of pre-trial detention. And again, the progress is extremely slow. 32% in 2003 to 2005 to currently 31%. 1% change in all these years. Poverty, we have done quite well on. Poverty has been reduced significantly, extreme poverty, but most of it has come from one part of the world. So it's an average that has done well. That average is not shared globally, and people in sub-Saharan Africa are still very poor. One or two big issues that I put on the table. One is the legal empowerment of poor women and girls. I think that one needs a lot of attention for, I'm sure, reasons that will be well known to all. And there are good legal and international norms on which we can build. For example, CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, or regionally, Africa has done a great job in the Maputo Declaration to the Africa Charter on Human Rights. So that's a big one, area that needs attention. Another big one is achieving the rule of law in conflict states, states that are fragile and in conflict. And there are good ideas on how to do so. There's a paper published by Gour and Van Veen in which they identify what they call 3 game changers. The main argument is that the solution is not technical, it's political. And but you have to blend the politics with technical interventions and do it slowly in an evolutionary manner and not using the classic kind of project interventions. The New Deal goals are well articulated since 2011, and we can build on that. I wanted to share, as I'm wrapping this up, some baseline data I found in India, which I think is fascinating. And this was published by the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative last year. And you might know this better than I do. I just found it fascinating, and I just mentioned one or two. And you can find this online, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative report in India on SDG 16. 56% of people in India feel their government is inclusive, which is a Pew Foundation research. And 75% Indians trust their government decisions. I found that quite interesting and pretty good. But when you look at other things like women make up 6% of the police. The judiciary has an average of 14% women. 3.5% of public service jobs for people with disabilities are filled. 30% of Delhi households paid a bribe at least once during the last 12 months. The highest rate of corruption in a public service in India was which public service? Everybody knows, I guess, but nobody will say it. Yeah, police. And so on. The Indian Institute of Psychiatry states that at least half of all children have experienced sexual abuse. A majority of people feel safe in their neighborhoods during the day, but very few always feel safe. Just some indicators as to where you are and where you would probably have to go to achieve SDG 16, and it's going to be a little bit of a journey. The amount of money required is only one thing, and development alternatives provided an interesting projection of the gap, the financial gap. The finance required is 0.96 trillion US dollars, and you currently have a gap of 0.56 trillion US dollars. But India is India and should be able to meet that financial gap without too much trouble. There are a whole range of different approaches new approaches to raising money. India, I found the voluntary national report to the UN on the SDGs, and India outlined a range of programs, innovative work, but programs seeking to address the SDGs, including universal rural electrification, road and digital connectivity for all, and so on. Renewable energy, sanitation, universal elementary education, and that kind of thing. Let me just say that I think the SDGs can be achieved. I put my neck out again. I think that the SDGs can be achieved by 2030 to a large extent. Some countries might not get there, but on average we can, but we will have to do things very differently. Some big things are changing. India has something that I find very interesting called the 8-Step Foundation, which is run by Mrs. Nilikani, the former CEO of Infosys. And this 8-Step Foundation has a goal of helping childhood education improve 200 million children in 5 years. Now that's phenomenal. And they're using something called a societal platform, which I don't fully understand, and I can't get anybody from 8-Step Foundation to talk to me as yet. So I'm saying this publicly because somebody might know them, and so we can get to learn about how this platform will actually work and how we can